I was standing in my driveway in Scottsdale, Arizona, admiring the new HVAC unit that had just been installed on the side of my house when I heard the sharp click of heels on pavement behind me. "Excuse me, but that is absolutely unacceptable," a shrill voice announced before I could even turn around. I already knew who it was. Patricia Morrison, the president of the Sunset Ridge HOA, had made it her personal mission to find fault with everything in our neighborhood since she'd moved in 3 years ago. She was standing there in her cream-colored pantsuit, her blonde hair teased into that distinctive haircut that seemed to be standard issue for women who wanted to speak to managers everywhere. Her arms were crossed, and her face was twisted into an expression of manufactured outrage. "Good morning, Patricia," I said, keeping my voice level. "What seems to be the problem?" "That thing," she said, pointing a manicured finger at my brand-new Carrier HVAC unit. "It is an eyesore, and I am certain it violates at least 3 different HOA regulations. I will be filing a formal complaint, and you will need to remove it immediately." I took a deep breath. My name is Harold Peterson, and I had lived in this Phoenix suburb for nearly 15 years. I worked as an engineer at a local manufacturing plant, which meant I had a pretty good understanding of building codes, specifications, and regulations. When my old air conditioning system finally gave up the ghost last month during a particularly brutal Arizona summer, I had done my homework. I had researched every HOA rule, every city code, and every state regulation before selecting and installing this unit. "Patricia, this unit meets all manufacturer specifications and complies with every single code requirement," I explained. "I have all the documentation inside if you would like to review it." Her eyes narrowed. "I do not need to see your so-called documentation. I can see with my own eyes that it is too large, too loud, and frankly, it is lowering property values just by existing. You have 72 hours to remove it, or the HOA will be forced to take legal action." She turned on her heel and marched back toward her house, which was 3 doors down from mine. I stood there for a moment, feeling my blood pressure rise despite my best efforts to stay calm. This was not the first time Patricia had targeted me, but it was definitely the most ridiculous complaint yet. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was my neighbor, Marcus Chen, who lived directly across the street. "Dude, I just saw Patricia storming away from your house. What did you do this time?" "Installed an HVAC system that works," I replied. "Oh no. How dare you have functioning air conditioning in Arizona? The audacity." I laughed despite my frustration. Marcus had been dealing with Patricia's complaints for years as well. She had once tried to fine him because his mailbox was allegedly 3 inches too far to the left. It took him hiring a surveyor to prove that his mailbox was exactly where it had always been and exactly where it was supposed to be. "She says I have to remove it in 72 hours, I told him. "Yeah, good luck with that. Listen, my wife's brother is a real estate attorney. If this escalates, let me know. I am sure he would be happy to help." I thanked Marcus and headed inside. The cool air hit me as soon as I opened the door, a stark contrast to the already rising heat outside. It was only 9 in the morning, and it was already pushing 90 degrees. By afternoon, it would easily hit 105. The idea of removing my air conditioning system was not just inconvenient, it was potentially dangerous. I pulled out the thick folder I had assembled during the installation process. Inside was everything: the manufacturer's specifications for the Carrier unit, the city permit I had obtained before installation, the inspection certificate from the city inspector who had signed off on the work, copies of all relevant HOA regulations, and even a letter from the installation company confirming that the unit met all local, state, and federal requirements. The HOA rules were clear. HVAC systems had to be installed on the side or rear of the property, not visible from the front street. Check. They had to be installed by a licensed contractor. Check. They had to meet noise ordinance requirements, which in Scottsdale meant not exceeding 65 decibels during the day and 55 at night when measured from the property line. My unit operated at 58 decibels at full capacity, well within limits. Check. I scanned through every single regulation 3 times, looking for anything I might have missed. There was nothing. My installation was completely compliant. That afternoon, I received a certified letter from the HOA. Inside was a formal violation notice, claiming that my HVAC unit violated sections 4.3, 7.2, and 9.8 of the HOA regulations. I pulled out my copy of the regulations and looked up each section. Section 4.3 dealt with exterior modifications requiring architectural approval. However, there was a specific exemption for like-kind replacements of essential systems, including but not limited to roofing, HVAC, and plumbing. Since I was replacing an existing HVAC system with a new one in the same location, this exemption applied. Section 7.2 addressed noise pollution. As I had already confirmed, my unit was well within the specified limits. Section 9.8 covered visual harmony and aesthetic standards. This was the vaguest section, basically saying that all exterior elements should maintain the character and aesthetic values of the community. It was the kind of catch-all regulation that HOAs loved because it could mean anything they wanted it to mean. I decided to attend the next HOA board meeting, which was scheduled for the following Wednesday. In the meantime, I documented everything. I took photographs of my HVAC unit from every angle. I measured the decibel levels at different times of day using a calibrated sound meter I borrowed from work. I compared my unit to other HVAC systems in the neighborhood and photographed those as well. What I found was interesting. At least 8 other homes in our development had similar or larger units, including Patricia's own house, which sported a massive train unit that was actually louder than mine. Wednesday evening arrived, and I walked into the community center where the HOA meetings were held. About 20 homeowners were scattered around the room, most of them looking bored or resigned. Patricia sat at the front table with the other board members. Vice President Donald Kramer, a retired accountant who usually just went along with whatever Patricia said. Treasurer Margaret Wu, who seemed mainly concerned with the HOA's finances and little else. And Secretary Robert Flynn, a middle-aged man who took meticulous notes but rarely spoke. Patricia called the meeting to order and worked through the usual business, approving the previous meeting's minutes, discussing the budget for landscaping, and addressing a complaint about someone's Christmas decorations that were allegedly left up 2 days past the approved date. Then she got to my item. Next, we have the matter of the unauthorized and non-compliant HVAC installation at 4725 Desert Willow Drive, the residence of Harold Peterson, Patricia announced, somehow making my name sound like an accusation. Mr. Peterson installed an oversized, unsightly HVAC unit without proper approval, in clear violation of multiple HOA regulations. The board recommends immediate removal and a fine of $200 per day until compliance is achieved. I raised my hand. I would like to address the board. Patricia sighed dramatically. You may speak, Mr. Peterson, but the board's decision is final. Actually, according to the HOA bylaws, Homeowners have the right to present their case before any final decisions are made regarding violations and fines, I said calmly. I had spent the last few days reading not just the regulations, but also the actual legal bylaws that governed our HOA. Robert Flynn leaned over and whispered something to Patricia. She looked annoyed but nodded curtly. I stood up and walked to the front, placing my folder on the table. I have here complete documentation showing that my HVAC installation is fully compliant with all HOA regulations, city codes, and state requirements. First, regarding the claim that I did not obtain proper approval, Section 4.3 specifically exempts like-kind replacements of essential systems. I replaced an existing HVAC unit that failed. This is a like-kind replacement in the exact same location. I pulled out the relevant page and placed it where everyone could see it. Second, regarding noise complaints, my unit operates at 58 decibels at full capacity, which is 7 decibels below the daytime limit and only 3 above the nighttime limit. However, the unit rarely operates at full capacity, and even when it does, it cycles off regularly. I have measurements taken at multiple times over the past week. I showed them the data sheets. Third, regarding the aesthetic standards claim, I have photographs here showing at least 8 other homes in this community with similar or larger HVAC units, including several that are more visible from the street than mine. I am being singled out for an installation that is completely standard in this neighborhood. I spread out the photographs across the table. Patricia's face was turning red. "This is irrelevant," she said. "Those other installations may also be in violation, but we are addressing your violation today." "So you are admitting that you are selectively enforcing the rules?" I asked. Margaret Wu, the treasurer, picked up one of the photographs. "Patricia, this one is your house. Your HVAC unit is actually larger than Mr. Peterson's." "That is completely different," Patricia snapped. "Mine was installed by the previous owner and was grandfathered in." "So was mine," I said. "I have owned my home for 15 years. There has been an HVAC unit in that exact location for at least 30 years. I simply replaced a broken unit with a new one. If yours is grandfathered, then so is mine." Donald Kramer cleared his throat. "Patricia, he makes a valid point. If we start forcing people to remove properly installed, code-compliant HVAC systems, we are opening ourselves up to serious legal liability. These systems are essential in Arizona. We cannot have people living without air conditioning." "I am not suggesting people live without air conditioning," Patricia said through gritted teeth. "I am suggesting that Mr. Peterson install a more aesthetically appropriate unit in a less visible location." "There is no less visible location," I said. "City code requires HVAC units to be a certain distance from property lines, windows, and doors for safety and efficiency reasons. The location I chose, which is the same location where the previous unit was installed, is the only location on my property that meets all those requirements. Moving it anywhere else would violate city code." I pulled out another document. "I have a letter here from the city planning department confirming this." Robert Flynn was flipping through his notes. "According to the records, Mr. Peterson did obtain a city permit for this installation, and it was inspected and approved. We do not have the authority to override city permits." Patricia stood up abruptly. "This meeting is adjourned. The board will review the information and make a final determination within 30 days. "Actually," Margaret Wu said, not standing up, "I think we should vote now. We have all the information we need, and Mr. Peterson has clearly demonstrated compliance. I move to dismiss the violation." "I second," Donald Kramer said. Patricia looked like she wanted to argue, but Robert Flynn was already calling for a vote. Margaret and Donald voted to dismiss. Robert abstained. Patricia voted to uphold the violation, 3-1 with one abstention. The violation was dismissed. I gathered my documents, thanked the board, and left. As I walked to my car, I heard rapid footsteps behind me. "This is not over," Patricia hissed. "I will find a way to make you remove that monstrosity." "Patricia, why are you targeting me?" I asked, genuinely curious. "I have lived here peacefully for 15 years. I follow the rules. I keep my property maintained. What is your actual problem?" She stepped closer, her voice low and venomous. "You think you are so smart with your engineering degree and your documentation. This is my neighborhood. I decide what is acceptable and what is not. You do not get to make me look foolish in front of the board." "I am not trying to make you look foolish," I said. "I am just trying to have functioning air conditioning." "We will see about that," she said, and walked away. I sat in my car for a moment, feeling uneasy. Patricia's reaction was way out of proportion to the situation. This was not about the HVAC unit at all. This was about control and ego. Over the next few weeks, things escalated in ways I could not have predicted. I started receiving violation notices for the most ridiculous things. My trash can was allegedly left out 15 minutes past the required time. My mailbox needed repainting. My front yard desert landscaping did not meet standards, even though it had not changed in 10 years. Each violation came with a $50 fine. I fought every single one. The trash can claim was false because I had security camera footage showing exactly when I brought it in. The mailbox was freshly painted just 6 months ago and was in perfect condition. The landscaping met all HOA standards, and I had photographs proving it had not changed. But fighting these violations took time and energy. I had to prepare documentation, attend meetings, and deal with certified letters constantly showing up at my house. It was harassment, pure and simple. Marcus told me that Patricia was doing the same thing to 2 other homeowners who had voted against one of her proposals at a previous meeting. She was using the HOA as a weapon to punish people who disagreed with her. Then things took a darker turn. I came home from work one Tuesday afternoon to find my HVAC unit had been vandalized. Someone had taken a hammer or crowbar to the exterior housing, denting it badly and damaging the fan blades. The unit still technically worked, but it was running inefficiently and making a grinding noise. I called the police and filed a report. Officer Jennifer Ramirez came out and took photographs and statements. I showed her the security camera footage from my front door camera, but the angle did not quite capture the side of the house where the unit was located. However, it did show Patricia walking past my house around the estimated time of the vandalism, which was unusual since her normal walking route went in the other direction. "I cannot arrest someone based on them walking past your house," Officer Ramirez said, "but I will include this in the report. Make sure you install a camera that covers that side of your property." The repair cost me $800. I installed 2 new security cameras that covered every angle of my property. 3 days later, I received another violation notice from the HOA. This one claimed that my damaged HVAC unit was now in violation of aesthetic standards due to the visible damage. The notice demanded I repair or replace it within 14 days or face fines of $100 per day. I called an emergency meeting with the HOA board. I brought the police report showing that my unit had been vandalized, and I brought printouts from my new security cameras showing Patricia walking around my property late at night on 2 separate occasions after the vandalism. "Why were you on my property?" I asked Patricia directly at the meeting. "I was not on your property," she said. "I was on the sidewalk, which is public space. I was taking my evening walk. At midnight, on a Tuesday, on a route you never take. I can walk wherever I want, whenever I want." Margaret Wu was looking at the police report. "Patricia, are you aware that vandalism is a criminal offense? If you had any involvement in this, the HOA could be held liable." "I had nothing to do with any vandalism," Patricia said, "and I resent the accusation. However, regardless of how Mr. Peterson's unit became damaged, the fact remains that it is now an eyesore and must be repaired or replaced." "Which I am already doing," I said. "The repair parts have been ordered and will be installed next week." "But I am not paying any fines for damage that someone else caused through criminal activity." Donald Kramer nodded. "That seems reasonable. I move to waive any fines related to this issue pending repair." The motion passed, even with Patricia voting against it, but the harassment did not stop. 2 weeks later, I received a notice that the HOA was proposing a new regulation that would require all HVAC units to be screened from view by decorative fencing or landscaping. The proposal was specifically tailored to target my installation, since most other units in the neighborhood were already partially screened by existing landscaping or were in less visible locations. The proposal would require me to spend thousands of dollars building a decorative screen around my unit, which would also reduce its efficiency and potentially void the manufacturer's warranty by restricting airflow. I reached out to Marcus's brother-in-law, the real estate attorney. His name was Theodore Banks, and he had been practicing for 20 years with a specialty in HOA disputes. We met at a coffee shop in Old Town Scottsdale on a Saturday morning. I brought all my documentation, the violation notices, the police report, and the proposed new regulation. Theodore spent an hour reviewing everything, occasionally shaking his head or making notes. "This is textbook HOA abuse," he finally said. "Patricia Morrison is engaging in selective enforcement, harassment, and possibly conspiracy to commit vandalism. The new regulation she is proposing is called a targeted rule, and courts generally do not look kindly on HOA rules that are created specifically to target individual homeowners." "What are my options?" I asked. "Several. First, we can file a complaint with the Arizona Department of Real Estate, which oversees HOA management. Second, we can demand that the HOA conduct a fair hearing under Arizona Revised Statute Title 33, which governs planned communities. Third, if necessary, we can file a civil lawsuit for harassment and seek damages plus attorney fees. Arizona law allows prevailing parties in HOA disputes to recover their legal costs." "I do not want to sue," I said. "I just want to be left alone." "I understand, but sometimes the threat of legal action is enough to make HOA board members realize they are crossing the line. Let me draft a letter outlining your rights and making it clear that you are prepared to take legal action if the harassment continues. That alone might resolve this." Theodore drafted a strongly worded letter that cited specific Arizona statutes, referenced the documented harassment, and demanded that all violation notices be rescinded, and that the proposed new HVAC screening regulation be withdrawn. The letter also demanded that the HOA conduct an investigation into the vandalism and take appropriate action if any board members were involved. The letter was sent via certified mail to the HOA board and to the property management company that handled the HOA's administrative work. The response came 3 days later, but not in the form I expected. Instead of backing down, Patricia doubled down. She called an emergency board meeting and proposed that I be banned from all HOA common areas, including the community pool, park, and clubhouse, for threatening the board with frivolous litigation. The meeting was scheduled for a Thursday evening. Theodore advised me to attend and to let him do most of the talking. The community center was packed. Word had spread through the neighborhood about the dispute, and apparently many residents were fed up with Patricia's authoritarian approach to HOA management. I recognized at least 30 people in the crowd, far more than had ever attended a regular meeting. Patricia called the meeting to order and immediately launched into a speech about how the HOA board had the authority to maintain community standards and how some residents thought they were above the rules. Mr. Peterson has repeatedly violated community standards, damaged community property values, and is now threatening legal action against volunteers who are simply trying to maintain the quality of life in Sunset Ridge, Patricia declared. The board has therefore decided to suspend his access to all community amenities until he demonstrates willingness to comply with community regulations. Theodore stood up. "May I address the board?" Patricia looked like she wanted to refuse, but Margaret Wu spoke up. "I think we should hear from Mr. Peterson's attorney." Theodore introduced himself and then methodically went through the facts. He explained how every violation notice I had received was either unfounded or targeted. He presented the police report regarding the vandalism. He showed how the proposed new regulation was clearly designed to target me specifically. He cited Arizona law regarding HOA governance and homeowner rights. "What you are proposing tonight," Theodore said, "is retaliation against a homeowner for exercising his legal rights. This is explicitly prohibited under Arizona Revised Statute 33-1808. If this board votes to suspend Mr. Peterson's access to community amenities, he will file a lawsuit tomorrow morning, and I am confident he will prevail. Furthermore, board members who vote for this action may be held personally liable for damages." That last part got everyone's attention. Donald Kramer and Margaret Wu were suddenly very interested in the documents Theodore was showing them. A homeowner in the back row stood up. "I would like to speak." It was Rachel Thompson, who lived 2 streets over. "Patricia has been harassing me too. I painted my front door blue, which is on the approved color list, but she said it was the wrong shade of blue. She has fined me $600 so far. I have 3 kids and cannot afford to keep fighting this." Another homeowner stood. "She sent me a violation notice because my teenager's car was parked in my driveway, my own driveway. She said it was a commercial vehicle because it had a pizza delivery sign on top, but my son works part-time delivering pizzas. It is not a commercial vehicle. It is his personal car that he uses for his after-school job." More people started speaking up. Patricia had been terrorizing the neighborhood for months, and people had been too intimidated or too tired to fight back. Margaret Wu put down her pen. "I was not aware of the extent of these issues," she said quietly. "Patricia, you have been issuing violation notices without bringing them to the full board for review. That is not how we are supposed to operate." "I am the president," Patricia said. "I have the authority to issue violations." "No, you do not," Robert Flynn said, speaking up for the first time in my memory. "According to our bylaws, violation notices must be reviewed and approved by a majority of the board before being sent to homeowners. You have been acting unilaterally." Theodore pulled out another document. "I have also obtained records from the property management company showing that Miss Morrison has been directing them to send violation notices without board approval. This is a breach of fiduciary duty." Patricia stood up, her face red. "I do not have to sit here and listen to this. I have worked tirelessly for this community, and this is the thanks I get. You are all ungrateful and you do not deserve my service. Then perhaps you should resign, Margaret Wu said calmly. The room went silent. I will not resign, Patricia said. You will have to remove me. Very well, Margaret said. She looked at Donald and Robert. I move to call a special election to recall the board president based on violation of bylaws and breach of fiduciary duty. Do I have a second? Second, Donald said immediately. Robert nodded. I will begin the process. According to our bylaws, we need a petition signed by at least 20% of homeowners to trigger a recall election. I will get you signatures tonight, Rachel Thompson said. She pulled out her phone and started typing. I am creating a digital petition right now. We will have 20% by morning. Patricia grabbed her purse and stormed out of the meeting. The remaining board members voted unanimously to suspend all pending violation notices pending review, to rescind my ban from community amenities before it was even implemented, and to withdraw the proposed HVAC screening regulation. The meeting adjourned in a buzz of conversation. Several neighbors came up to thank me for standing up to Patricia. Marcus clapped me on the shoulder. Dude, that was intense, he said. Theodore packed up his documents. I think this is largely resolved, but keep documenting everything just in case. If Patricia tries anything else, let me know immediately. I thought it was over. I was wrong. The petition to recall Patricia got the required signatures within 18 hours. Rachel Thompson's digital petition went viral within the community, and ultimately more than 60% of homeowners signed it. A recall election was scheduled for 3 weeks out. During those 3 weeks, Patricia launched a campaign of misinformation. She sent emails to all homeowners claiming that I was trying to destroy the HOA, that property values were plummeting because of my industrial-sized HVAC unit, and that the board members who voted against her were part of a conspiracy to turn Sunset Ridge into a slum. Most people ignored her increasingly unhinged emails, but a few believed her. I received some hostile glares at the grocery store and one angry voicemail from someone I did not even know. Then, 1 week before the recall election, I woke up at 3 in the morning to the sound of my HVAC unit making a horrible screeching noise. I ran outside and found that someone had poured concrete mix into the unit's exterior vents. The unit was trying to run but was overheating because it could not draw air properly. I shut it down immediately and called the police. Officer Ramirez responded again, and this time I had clear security camera footage. The footage showed Patricia walking up to my unit at 2:15 in the morning with a bag from a hardware store. She spent approximately 4 minutes at the unit, then walked quickly back to her car, which was parked around the corner. That is pretty clear evidence, Officer Ramirez said. I am going to need to arrest her for criminal damage. How much is the damage? She asked. I called my HVAC technician who came out at 6 in the morning. After inspecting the unit, he gave me the bad news. The concrete had hardened inside critical components. The unit was a total loss. Replacement cost, $12,000. That is criminal damage in the first degree, Officer Ramirez said. That is a Class 4 felony in Arizona because the damage exceeds $10,000. She went to Patricia's house and arrested her at 7:30 that morning. I did not witness the arrest, but Marcus did. He said Patricia screamed at the officers that it was all a setup and that I had somehow fabricated the video evidence. The arrest made the local news. HOA president arrested for vandalizing homeowner's air conditioning unit was the headline. The story detailed the months-long dispute and the extensive documentation showing Patricia's pattern of harassment. The recall election became unnecessary because Patricia resigned from the board the day after her arrest. Her lawyer advised her that continuing as HOA president while facing felony charges was not a good look. Margaret Wu was appointed interim president, and the board immediately began working to repair the damage Patricia had caused. They sent letters to all homeowners who had received questionable violation notices, rescinding the notices and refunding any fines that had been paid. They established new procedures to ensure board accountability and transparency. My homeowner's insurance covered the HVAC replacement, though I had to pay a $1,000 deductible. Theodore helped me file a civil lawsuit against Patricia for the deductible, additional damages, and attorney fees. Patricia's criminal case moved through the court system slowly. Her lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecutor was not interested in being lenient. The evidence was overwhelming, and Patricia had caused significant financial harm. She eventually pleaded guilty to criminal damage in exchange for the prosecutor not pursuing additional charges related to the earlier vandalism incident. She was sentenced to 2 years of probation, ordered to pay full restitution for my HVAC unit, including the deductible, and required to complete anger management counseling. She was also ordered to have no contact with me or anyone else in the Sunset Ridge community. The civil lawsuit was settled out of court. Patricia's homeowner's insurance paid for my attorney fees and additional damages totaling $15,000. Theodore told me it was one of the more clear-cut HOA harassment cases he had handled. 6 months after the whole ordeal began, I was finally able to relax in my home with my functioning, code-compliant HVAC system keeping me comfortable through another brutal Arizona summer. The temperature outside was 112 degrees, but inside my house it was a comfortable 72. The neighborhood had returned to normal, or rather, to a better version of normal. Margaret Wu turned out to be an excellent HOA president. She focused on actual community improvements rather than petty enforcement. She organized neighborhood gatherings, improved the community park, and established a reasonable, transparent process for handling genuine violations. Patricia moved out of Sunset Ridge 2 months after her sentencing. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she sold her house at a loss and moved to a condo in Phoenix where she would not have to deal with an HOA, or, more accurately, where an HOA would not have to deal with her. I ran into Rachel Thompson at the community pool one Saturday afternoon. Her front door was still painted the beautiful shade of blue that Patricia had objected to. "Can you believe we dealt with that nonsense for so long?" she asked, watching her kids play in the water. "People do not like confrontation," I said. Patricia counted on that. She knew most people would rather pay an unjust fine than fight back. "Well, I am glad you fought back. You saved a lot of people a lot of grief." I appreciated the sentiment, but honestly, I had just wanted to have air conditioning. Everything else had been forced on me. I never wanted to be the person who took on the HOA president. I just wanted to live in my home in peace. Marcus came over that evening with his wife and some beers. We sat on my back patio, enjoying the cool evening air and the perfect climate control provided by my much-maligned HVAC system. "You know what the craziest part is," Marcus said. "Your HVAC unit is not even visible from the street. I walked by your house a dozen times trying to see what Patricia was so upset about, and you cannot see it unless you specifically walk up your driveway and look." "It was never about the HVAC unit," I said. "It was about control. Patricia needed to feel powerful, and the only way she knew how to do that was to make other people's lives difficult." "Well, karma got her in the end," Marcus's wife said. I was not sure I believed in karma, but I did believe in documentation, knowing your rights and standing up for yourself when necessary. Those three things had saved me from a nightmare situation. Theodore called me a few weeks later with an interesting piece of information. Apparently, Patricia had been the president of her previous HOA before moving to Sunset Ridge, and she had been forced out of that position after similar complaints about harassment and overreach. This was a pattern for her. Some people are attracted to HOA board positions for the wrong reasons, Theodore explained. They see it as an opportunity to exercise power over their neighbors rather than as a service role to help maintain the community. Is there any way to prevent people like that from taking over HOA boards? I asked. Better bylaws help, he said. Requiring board approval for enforcement actions, having term limits for officers, establishing clear appeal processes for homeowners. The structural reforms your current board implemented are a good model, but ultimately, it requires engaged homeowners who pay attention and speak up when things go wrong. That was the real lesson from the whole experience. HOAs are not inherently bad, but they require oversight and participation. When good people stay silent and let petty tyrants take control, everyone suffers. A year after everything happened, Margaret Wu decided not to run for re-election as HOA president. She had done a great job stabilizing things, but she wanted to focus on her family and her career. The new board election drew multiple qualified candidates who actually wanted to serve the community rather than rule over it. I did not run for the board. I had no interest in HOA politics, but I did vote, and I did attend occasional meetings to stay informed. That was my contribution to making sure we never had another Patricia situation. My HVAC system continued to work perfectly, maintaining a comfortable temperature through 2 more Arizona summers and the mild winters in between. It never drew another complaint because the new board was focused on actual issues rather than manufactured ones. I saw Patricia one more time, about 18 months after her arrest. I was having lunch at her restaurant in Phoenix when she walked in with someone I assumed was a family member. We made eye contact across the restaurant. She quickly looked away and chose a table on the opposite side of the dining room. I did not approach her. There was nothing to say. She had faced consequences for her actions. I had been made whole financially, and we both moved on with our lives. Sometimes that is the best resolution you can hope for. Looking back on the whole ordeal, I was grateful for several things. I was grateful for neighbors like Marcus and Rachel who supported me and were willing to stand up against unfair treatment. I was grateful for board members like Margaret Wu and Donald Kramer who ultimately chose to do the right thing. I was grateful for Theodore Banks, who provided expert legal guidance and helped me understand my rights. And I was grateful for Officer Ramirez, who took my vandalism report seriously and did thorough police work. But most of all, I was grateful that I had done my homework before installing my HVAC system. If I had not had all that documentation, if I had not been able to prove compliance with every code and regulation, things could have gone very differently. Patricia might have succeeded in forcing me to remove a perfectly good air conditioning system, and she might have continued terrorizing the neighborhood for years. The experience taught me that following the rules is not enough if you cannot prove you followed the rules. Documentation is everything. Photographs, receipts, permits, inspection reports, certified letters, security camera footage, every piece of paper and every digital record mattered. It also taught me that standing up for yourself matters, even when it is difficult and stressful. I could have given in to Patricia's initial demand. I could have removed my HVAC system or spent thousands of dollars on unnecessary screening just to make her happy. But giving in to unreasonable demands only encourages more unreasonable demands. Sometimes you have to draw a line and defend it. The Sunset Ridge community was better off for what happened, even though the process was painful. The new HOA procedures protected homeowners from future abuse. People were more engaged and more willing to question authority when something seemed wrong. The neighborhood felt more like a community and less like a dictatorship. On a practical level, my house stayed cool. My property value was unaffected, and I never had to deal with another frivolous HOA complaint. The new board sent out a quarterly newsletter with useful information about community events and legitimate maintenance issues, but they were not out hunting for minor violations to justify their existence. I settled into a comfortable routine. Work during the day, relaxing in my properly air-conditioned home in the evening, occasional neighborhood barbecues, swimming at the community pool on weekends. It was the peaceful suburban life I had moved to Scottsdale for in the first place. Marcus still joked about the situation sometimes. "Remember when Patricia thought your AC was destroying property values?" he would say, and we would laugh about how ridiculous the whole thing had been. But it had not been ridiculous when it was happening. It had been stressful and expensive and genuinely scary at times. The vandalism had been a real crime, and I had felt violated knowing someone had deliberately damaged my property. The constant violation notices had been harassment, and they had taken a toll on my mental health and my time. I shared my story with a few colleagues at work, and it turned out several of them had their own HOA horror stories. One guy had been fined for having the wrong style of landscaping rocks. Another had been threatened with legal action because his kid's basketball hoop was allegedly 6 inches too close to the street. These stories were surprisingly common. "Maybe HOAs are just a bad idea," one colleague suggested. "No," I said. "The idea of neighbors working together to maintain common areas and preserve property values is fine. The problem is when people with control issues get into positions of power and abuse that power. It is the same problem you see in any organization, from corporations to governments to volunteer groups. The key was having strong checks and balances, which our HOA now had. No single person could issue violations. All enforcement actions required board approval. Homeowners had a clear appeals process. Board meetings were transparent and well documented. These structural safeguards made it much harder for another Patricia to cause problems. I also learned a lot about Arizona HOA law through the experience, and I shared that knowledge with neighbors when relevant. I learned that Arizona has some of the strongest homeowner protection laws in the country, but many people do not know their rights. I learned that HOA boards can be held personally liable for certain actions. I learned that courts generally side with homeowners when HOA rules are selectively enforced, or when new rules are created to target specific individuals. Theodore told me I should write up my experience as a case study for other homeowners, but I never got around to it. Living through it once was enough. I did not need to relive it by writing about it in detail. Time passed as it does. The drama of the Patricia situation faded into neighborhood history, the story that got told at parties and barbecues. Did you hear about what happened before you moved in? Newer residents would be asked, and someone would tell the story of the HOA president who went to war over an air conditioner and ended up with a criminal record. My HVAC system kept running efficiently, requiring only routine maintenance. Every 6 months, a technician would come out to check it, replace filters, and make sure everything was functioning properly. The unit was rated to last 15 to 20 years, and I had no doubt it would make it. It was a quality system, properly installed, meeting all manufacturer specifications and code requirements. Sometimes I would stand in my driveway, looking at that unit humming away on the side of my house, and marvel at how something so mundane had become the center of such conflict. It was just a box with a fan and a compressor, doing the job it was designed to do. But to Patricia, it had represented something else, a challenge to her authority, a symbol that she could not control every aspect of the neighborhood. The irony was that if she had left me alone, I never would have challenged her on anything else. I was not an activist or a troublemaker. I was an engineer who wanted his air conditioning to work. But by picking a fight she could not win, Patricia had sparked the examination of all her other abuses of power. In the end, the situation had been a reminder that HOAs exist to serve homeowners, not the other way around. Board members are volunteers who should be working to improve the community, not petty tyrants looking for victims. When an HOA forgets that basic principle, homeowners have the right and the responsibility to correct the course. I never regretted fighting back against Patricia's harassment. I never regretted hiring Theodore or installing security cameras, or documenting everything, or standing up at board meetings. It had been the right thing to do, not just for me but for everyone in Sunset Ridge. And on hot summer days when the temperature outside was pushing 115 degrees, and inside my house it was a comfortable 72 degrees, I was especially grateful I had fought for my right to have a functioning, code-compliant HVAC system. Because in Arizona, air conditioning is not a luxury. It is a necessity. And nobody, not even an overzealous HOA president, had the right to take that away.